Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Be sure to subscribe to our channel. We publish new videos every day. Don't forget, grab your smartphone and download the Lava Matra app and stay in touch. Guru Mahārāja's message is your advantage. The following is a Sri Kṛṣṇa Caitanya book compilation given by His Holiness Jayapataka Swami Mahārāja on March 28th, 2022 at New Paniati Dham in Atlanta, Georgia, USA.
The Māyāvāda philosophy considers the Lord to be transformations of the material mode of goodness and equates the Jayapataka with the Supreme Brahman. Under the section, how all the residents of Varanasi became Vaishnavas. Caitanya Charitamrita, Adilila 7.113.
तत्ववस्तु के निराकार एवं विष्णु देहादि के मायिक विकार বলাই মায়াবাদ চিদানন্দ দেহ তার স্থান পরিবার তারে কহে প্রকৃত সত্যের বিকার
Supreme Personality of Godhead is full of spiritual potencies. Therefore, his body, name, fame, and entourage are all spiritual. The Mayavadi philosopher, due to ignorance, says that these are all merely transformations of the material mode of goodness. Purport. In the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the Supreme Personality of Godhead has classified his energies in two distinct divisions, namely Prakrita and Aprakrita, or Paraprakriti and Aparaprakriti. In the Vishnu Purana, the same distinction is made. The Mayavadi philosophers cannot understand these two Prakritis or natures, material and spiritual. But one who is actually intelligent can understand them. Considering the many varieties and activities in material nature, why should the Mayavadi philosophers deny the spiritual varieties of the spiritual world? The Bhagavatam 10.2.32 says, Ye anya aravandaksha vimuktamaninas tvai asta bhavat avishuddha budaya. The intelligence of those who think themselves liberated but have no information of the spiritual world is not yet clear. In this verse, the term avishuddha budaya refers to unclean intelligence. Due to unclean intelligence or a poor fund of knowledge, the Mayavadi philosophers cannot understand the distinction between material and spiritual varieties. Therefore, they cannot even think of spiritual varieties because they take it for granted that all variety is material. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu therefore explains in this verse that Kṛṣṇa, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or the Absolute Truth, has a spiritual body that is distinct from material bodies. And thus, his name, abode, entourage, and qualities are all spiritual. The material mode of goodness has nothing to do with spiritual varieties. Mayavadi philosophers however, cannot clearly understand spiritual varieties. Therefore, they imagine a negation of the material world to be the spiritual world. The Mayavadi qualities, the material qualities of goodness, passion, and ignorance cannot act in the spiritual world, which is therefore called Nirguna, as clearly indicated in Bhagavad Gita. Traigunya Vishaya Veda Nistraigunayo Bhava Arjuna. The material world is a manifestation of the three modes of material nature. But one has to become free from these modes to come to the spiritual world, where their influence is completely absent. Now, Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will disassociate Lord Shiva from Mayavad philosophy in the following verse.
So, Mayavadis think that all variety is something material.
But the Mayavadis think that all varieties are somewhat material.
And to give it the distinction, they say, to give it some distinction, they say that the Lord is manifested in the Lord of goodness.
He thinks that the distinctions are produced because of mode of goodness.
But actually, three modes of nature, ignorance, passion, or goodness, has nothing to do with the spiritual world.
But actually, the three modes of material nature, ignorance, passion, and goodness, has nothing to do with the spiritual world.
Since there's variety in the material world,
But since there is variety in the material world,
so from that we can understand that there must be variety in the spiritual world.
from that we can understand that there must be variety in the spiritual world.
Unfortunately, Mayavadis do not have this common sense.
Unfortunately, Mayavadis do not have this common sense.
And to listen to the Mayavadis, Lord Caitanya warned that one can get the spiritual life destroyed.
And to listen to the Mayavadis, Lord Chaitanya warned, can destroy one's spiritual life.
So, the Mayavadis, the Gyasis, think that not to be a sannyasi to achieve personal Brahman realization.
Mayavadi sannyasis think that the purpose of sannyas is to achieve Brahman realization.
They do not know about any other type of realization.
They do not know about any other type of realization.
However, the Lord Caitanya, he has instructed like Grihe Kato, Bhame Kato, Sadahari Bole Kato, other one is a Grihastha, or Vairahi, they could chant Hare Krishna.
However, we know that Lord Chaitanya has instructed Griya Thakur Vane, whether one is a Grihastha or wherever one may be, one must chant the holy name.
And so, Mayavadis have a very limited understanding of the absolute truth.
So the Mayavadis have very limited understanding of the absolute truth.
And the devotees have much clearer understanding.
And the devotees have much clearer understanding.
So that's why we're requesting everyone to become a devotee.
So that's why we are requesting everyone to become a devotee.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
আদেশ পালক
Caitanya,
Caitanya Charitamrita, Adilila, 7th chapter, text 114.
knowledge,
আদেশ পালক শঙ্করের দোষ না থাকিলেও তদ্ভাষ্য শ্রবণে জীবের সর্বনাশ। তার দোষ নাহি তো হে আজ্ঞাকারী দাস, আর সেই শুনে তার হয় সর্বনাশ।
Shankaracharya, who is an incarnation of Lord Shiva, is faultless because he is a servant carrying out the orders of the Lord. But those who follow his Māyāvāda philosophy are doomed. They will lose all their advancement in spiritual knowledge. Purport. Māyāvāda philosophers are very proud of exhibiting their Vedanta knowledge through grammatical jugglery. But in the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Sri Kṛṣṇa certifies that they are Maya Aprita Jnana, bereft of real knowledge due to Maya. Maya has two potencies with which to execute her two functions. The Prakshepatmika Shakti, the power to throw the living entity into the ocean of material existence, and Avranatmaka Shakti, the power to cover the knowledge of the living entity. The function of the Avranatmika Shakti is explained in the Bhagavad Gita by the word Maya Aprita Jnana. Why the Devi Maya or illusory energy of Kṛṣṇa takes away the knowledge of the Mayavadi philosophers is also explained in the Bhagavad Gita by the use of the words Asuram Bhavam Ashrita, which refers to a person who does not agree to the existence of the Lord. The Mayavadis who are not in agreement with the existence of the Lord can be classified in two groups, exemplified by the impersonalist Shankarites of Varanasi and the Buddhists of Saranatha. Both groups are Mayavadis, and Kṛṣṇa takes away their knowledge due to their atheistic philosophies. Neither group agrees to accept the existence of personal God. The Buddhist philosophers clearly deny both the soul and God, and although the Shankarites do not openly deny God, they say that the Absolute is Nirakar or formless. Thus both the Buddhists and Shankarites are Avishuddha Buddhaya, or imperfect and unclean in their knowledge and intelligence. The most prominent Mayavadi scholar, Sadananda Yogindra, has written a book called Vedanta Sara, in which he expounds the philosophy of Shankaracharya, and the followers of Shankara's philosophy attribute great importance to his statements. In this Vedanta Sara, Sadananda Yogindra defines Brahman as Satchid Ananda combined with knowledge and without duality, and he defines ignorance as knowledge distinct from that Sat and Asat. This is almost inconceivable, but it is a product of the three material qualities. Thus, he considers anything other than pure knowledge to be material. The center of ignorance is considered to be sometimes all-pervading and sometimes individual. Thus, according to this opinion, both the all-pervading Vishnu and the individual living entities are products of ignorance. In simple language, it is opinion of Sadananda Yogendra that since everything is nirakar, formless, the conception of Vishnu and the conception of the individual soul are both products of ignorance. He also explains that the Vishuddha Sattva conception of the Vaishnavas is nothing but pradhana, or the chief principle of creation. He maintains that when all pervading knowledge is contaminated by Vishuddha Sattva, which consists of a transformation of the quality of goodness, there arises the conception of Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the omnipotent, omniscient, supreme ruler, the super soul, the cause of all causes, the supreme Ishvara, etc. According to Sadananda Yogendra, because Ishvara, the supreme Lord, is the reservoir of all ignorance, he may be called Sarvagya or omniscient. For one who denies the existence of the omnipotent Supreme Personality of Godhead is more than Ishvara or the Lord. His conclusion, therefore, is that Supreme Personality of Godhead Ishvara is a transformation of material ignorance, and that the living entity Jiva is covered by ignorance. Thus he describes both collective and individual existence in darkness. According to Māyāvāda philosophers, the Vaishnava conception of the Lord as a Supreme Personality of Godhead and of the Jiva, an individual soul, as his eternal servant is a manifestation of ignorance. If we accept the judgment of Lord Kṛṣṇa in the Bhagavad Gita, however, the Mayavadis are to be considered Maya Akrita Jnana, or bereft of all knowledge, because they do not recognize the existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or they claim that his existence is a product of the material conception Maya. These are characteristics of asuras or demons. Lord Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, in his discourses with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, said, Jivera nistar lagi sutra kaila vyas, Māyāvādi bhasya sunile, hai sarvanash. Vyasadeva composed the Vedanta Sutra to deliver the conditioned souls from this material world. But Shankaracharya, by presenting the Vedanta Sutra in his own way, has clearly done a great disservice to human society. For one who follows his Mayavad philosophy is doomed. In the Vedanta Sutra, devotional service is clearly indicated. But the Mayavadi philosophers refuse to accept the spiritual body of the Supreme Absolute Person and refuse to accept that the living entity has an individual existence separate from that of the Supreme Lord. Thus, they have created atheistic havoc all over the world. For such a conclusion is against the very nature of the transcendental process of pure devotional service. The Mayavadi philosophers' unrealizable ambition to become one with the Supreme through denying the existence of the personality of Godhead results in a most calamitous misrepresentation of spiritual knowledge. And one who follows this philosophy is doomed to remain perpetually in this material world. Therefore, the Mayavadis are called Avishuddha Budaya, or unclean in knowledge. Because they are unclean in knowledge, all their austerities and penances end in frustration. Thus, although they may be honored at first as very learned scholars, ultimately they descend to physical activities of politics, social work, etc. Instead of becoming one with the Supreme Lord, they again become one with these material activities. This is explained in Srimad Bhagavatam 10.2.32. In actuality, the Māyāvāda philosophers very strictly follow the austerities and penances of spiritual life, and in this way are elevated to the impersonal Brahman platform. But due to their negligence of the lotus feet of the Lord, they again fall down to material existence.
The Māyāvādis are offending the Supreme Personality.
So the Māyāvādis are offending the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
As a result, they fall down again.
The result, they fall down again.
And the Buddhists don't believe in the soul, and don't believe in God.
The Buddhists don't believe in the soul and don't believe in God.
Bring the Buddhists back. Vedas, Shankaracharya preached covered Buddhism.
Defeating the Buddhist path, Shankaracharya preached covered Buddhism.
He did deny existence of the soul, but he said the soul basically was supreme.
He didn't deny the existence of soul, but basically he said that soul was supreme, or is supreme.
As a result, he brought some Buddhists back, but the Māyāvādis have misconception.
The result, he fought the Buddhist path with the Māyāvādis. He brought the Buddhists back, but the result, he spread the Māyāvādi misconception.
So the Vaishnava-acharyas, they all preached against these Māyāvādis.
The Vaishnava acharyas, they all preach against these Māyāvādis.
The Sri Sampradaya, Ramanuja, Acharya, he preached against it.
From the Sri Sampradaya, Sri Ramanujacharya, he preached against it.
Madhvacharya preached against it.
Sri Madhvacharya preached against it.
And Lord Caitanya, in his philosophy, he also preached against it.
And Lord Caitanya, in his philosophy, also preached against it.
So, Māyāvādis would treat each other as Narayana.
So the Māyāvādis treat each other as Narayana.
They thought that all meant to become God.
They thought that all are meant to become God.
And this is very offensive.
But obviously they are very offensive.
So the devotees, they understand that the Lord, He has transcendental activities.
So the devotees, they understand that the Lord has transcendental activities.
And they are very much attracted to the transcendental activities of the Lord.
And they are very much attracted to the transcendental activities of the Lord.
My Lord is, they think anything, any quality must be material.
But the Māyāvādis, they think any qualities, anything must be material.
Therefore they mislead themselves and mislead others.
Therefore, they mislead themselves and they mislead others. Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Leela, 7th chapter, text number 115.
মায়াধীশ বিষ্ণুকে মায়িক জ্ঞানী পাষণ্ডতা প্রকৃত করিয়া মানে বিষ্ণু কলেবর বিষ্ণু নিন্দা আর নাহি ইহার উপর
One who considers the transcendental body of the Lord, Vishnu, to be made of material nature is the greatest offender at the lotus feet of the Lord. There is no greater blasphemy against the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. Srila Bhakti-Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami explains that a variegated personal feature of the Absolute Truth is the Vishnu Tattva, and that the material energy which creates this cosmic manifestation is the energy of Lord Vishnu. The creative force is merely the energy of the Lord, but the foolish conclude that because the Lord has distributed himself in impersonal form, he has no separate existence. The impersonal Brahman, however, cannot possess energy, nor do that Maya. The illusory energy is covered by another Maya. There are hundreds and thousands of references. However, to Vishnu Maya, Parasya Shakti, or the energy of Lord Vishnu, in the Bhagavad Gita 7:14, Krishna refers to Mama Maya, my energy. Maya is controlled by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is not that he is covered by Maya. Therefore, Lord Vishnu cannot be a product of the material energy. In the beginning of the Vedanta Sutra, it is said, Janmadhyasya, indicating that the material energy is also an emanation of the Supreme Brahman. How then could he be covered by the material energy? If that were possible, material energy would be greater than the Supreme Brahman. Even these simple arguments, however, cannot be understood by the Māyāvāda philosophers, and therefore the term Maya Aprita Jnana, which is applied to them in the Bhagavad Gita, is extremely appropriate. Anyone who thinks that Lord Vishnu is a product of the material energy, anyone who thinks Lord Vishnu is a product of the material energy, as explained by Sadananda Yogendra, should immediately be understood to be insane, for his knowledge has been stolen by the illusory energy. Lord Vishnu cannot be placed within the category of the demigods. Those who are actually bewildered by the Māyāvāda philosophy and are still in the darkness of ignorance consider Lord Vishnu to be a demigod. In defiance of the Rig Vedic mantra, Om Tat Vishnu Paramam Pada, Vishnu is always in a superior position. This mantra is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. Matta Partram Nanyat. There is no truth superior to Lord Kṛṣṇa or Vishnu. Thus only those whose knowledge has been bewildered consider Lord Vishnu to be a demigod, and therefore suggest that one may worship either Lord Vishnu, the goddess Kali, Durga, or whomever one likes, and achieve the same result. This is an ignorant conclusion that is not accepted in the Bhagavad Gita, which distinctly says, Yanti Deva Vrata Devan, Yanti Mat Yagno Bhimam. The worshippers of the demigods will be promoted to the respective planets of the demigods, but devotees of the Supreme Lord will go back home back to Godhead. Lord Krishna explains very clearly in Bhagavad Gita 7:14 that his material energy is very difficult to overcome. Devi Esha Gunamayi Maya Duradaya. Maya's influence is so strong that even learned scholars and spiritualists are also covered by Maya and think themselves to be as good as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Actually, however, to free oneself from the influence of Maya, one must surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as Krishna also states in Bhagavad Gita 7:14. Mam evaya prapadante mayam etam tarantite. It is to be concluded, therefore, that Lord Vishnu does not belong to this material creation, but to the spiritual world. To must conceive Lord Vishnu to have a material body or to equate him with the demigods is the most offensive blasphemy against Lord Vishnu. And offenders against the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu cannot advance in spiritual knowledge. They are called Maya Aprita Jnana, or those whose knowledge has been stolen by the influence of illusion. One who thinks that there is a difference between Lord Vishnu's body and his soul dwells in the darkest region of ignorance. There is no difference between Lord Vishnu's body and Vishnu's soul, for they are Advaya Jnana, one knowledge. In this world, there is a difference between the material body and the spiritual soul. But in the spiritual world, everything is spiritual, and there are no such differences. The greatest offense of the Māyāvāda philosophers is to consider Lord Vishnu and the living entities to be one and the same. In this connection, the Padma Puran states, Archaye Vishnu Shriladhir Gurushu Naramater Vaishnave Jati Budiyasya Vandaki Saha. One who considers the Archamurti, the worshipable deity of Lord Vishnu, to be stone, the spiritual master to be an ordinary human being, and a Vaishnava to belong to a particular caste or creed, is possessed of hellish intelligence. One who follows such conclusions is doomed.
After Lord Caitanya went to Vrindavan, he came back.
See, after Lord Caitanya went to Vrindavan, he came back
And he taught Swami in Prayag.
He taught Rupa Goswami in Prayag.
And he taught Sanatana Goswami in Banaras.
And then he taught Sanatana Goswami in Banaras.
This section they're reading from actually was placed in the Adi Lila.
The section we are reading from is actually placed in Adi Lila.
Because Krishnadas Kaviraj thought it was so important.
Because Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami thought it was so important.
I put first.
So he put first.
We're already in Adi Lila. We came back and reading this section.
We are already in Madhya Lila, but we came back to this section in Adi Lila.
Because this particular Māyāvāda is placed in the Adi Lila, so to give the true chronology are now presenting it.
So although it was presented in Adilila, we are presenting the true chronology. That's why we are doing it now.
This I'm compiling various books on Lord Caitanya. I got Kṛṣṇa book, a Caitanya book.
So we're compiling various books on Chaitanya Leela, like we have Kṛṣṇa book, this is Chaitanya book.
But this section is how the Caitanya Charitamrita.
This section is from Chaitanya Charitamrita.
Otherwise, I'll go about 9 or 10 books.
Otherwise, there are about 9 or 10 books.
And so you present different books in different pastimes.
So these 10 different books present different pastimes.
Or the details of the same pastime.
All the details of the same pastime.
And then some of the pastimes, some details are given in the Caitanya Māyāvāda, some are Caitanya Māyāvāda, different literature.
Some details are given in Chaitanya Bhagavad, some details are in Chaitanya Mangal, and some in other books.
This section is from the Caitanya Charitamrita.
So this section is from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita.
After this section, Lord Caitanya made all the Māyāvādis, Vaishnavas.
After this section, Lord Chaitanya made all the Māyāvādis into Vaishnavas.
And throughout the other books, which comment upon it.
Then 2 of the other books will comment upon it.
So, anyway, we see that in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Kṛṣṇa is transcendental and he appears in the human forms.
So we see that in Srimad Bhagavatam that Lord Sri Krishna is transcendental and he appeared in different forms.
Māyāvādis are thinking that Kṛṣṇa variety is material.
The Māyāvādis think Krishna's body is material.
Actually, Kṛṣṇa is all not different.
But actually Krishna's soul are not different.
Okay, well, we have a different body, a different soul.
In the material world, we have a different body and different soul.
In the spiritual world, not such difference.
But in the spiritual world, there is no such difference.
So we will start from verse 116.
So we are now at verse 116.
Any questions?
Any questions?
Who here is a disciple of Bhakti Kṛṣṇa?
Any disciples of Bhakti Thiru Swami Maharaj?
Because he was very dear to me, I pray every day for the well-being of his disciples.
So because he was very dear to me, I pray every day for the well-being of his disciples.
I also pray of all my disciples.
Of course, I also pray for all of my disciples.
And I pray also for the disciples.
And I also pray for disciples of Bhakti Swami Mahārāja.
He asked me to pray.
Because he asked me to pray.
And my teacher, Swami, left suddenly, so he didn't have time to ask.
And Bhakti Swami Mahārāja left suddenly, so he didn't have time to ask.
But I consider it a duty I have.
But I consider it's my duty.
Do you like our ad-free videos? Be sure to subscribe to our channel. We publish new videos every day, and don't forget to like and share our channel.